Our story begins inside of a long series of underground Coruscant tunnels as Senator Palpatine of Naboo is using a speeder to move into the industrial sector. Across the stars, the blockade over Naboo is in full effect, with Chancellor Valorum sending 2 Jedi into the situation. The escalation necessary for him to eventually rise to Chancellor was looking perfect. And as Sidious moved into the final tunnels, he allowed himself to reflect on the moment and imagine the future. Before long, the Senate and the Queen of Naboo will lose faith in Valorum. He will be voted out of his role as Chancellor, and in the Senate, feeling sympathy for him and for Naboo will give Palpatine the necessary votes to become the next Chancellor. Darth Plagueis was alive, awaiting the moment that it happens, so Palpatine can promote him to co-Chancellor. And although Palpatine was having some doubt about it, he would ignore those doubts for now. And then there were Maul and Count Dooku. Maul was an excellent assassin, a weapon carved to carry out the will of the Sith. Dooku was kind of the opposite. He was an elite weapon in diplomacy and politics, but his abilities with the lightsaber should not be underestimated. Overall, the foundation of the dark side was strong, and Sidious knew it would all work in his favor. It always did. Finally, he would arrive at the Limerge building, deep in the industrial sector. Maul was here, and Sidious would be sending him to locate the Jedi on Naboo. But Darth Maul had other ideas. For many years, Darth Maul has been sharpened as a tool for the Sith under Sidious, but Maul never liked Sidious. In fact, he has always hated his master. From the day Sidious took him from Dathomir and his family, Maul would swear to himself that he would someday kill Sidious. For years, Maul trained and grew stronger in the dark side. He's practiced his lightsaber forms and duels thousands of times with Sidious, and all alone. But Sidious has underestimated him. In recent years, Maul has become secondary in Sidious's mind as Sidious got more and more involved in the game of politics. This has allowed Maul to pursue knowledge and power in the shadows. He's been waiting, training, observing, biding his time until the right opportunity presents itself. And now, with some spying on his master, Maul has learned that Sidious's master, Darth Plagueis, has returned to the galaxy. And Maul knew now is the time. Sidious has become overconfident, thinking everything will work out for him. But today, he will die. And Darth Sidious would take an old rickety elevator up to the main level of the Limerge building main room. This was where the hangar, the ritual areas, and the training hall rooms were located. And as Sidious walked into the hangar, something was off. The dark side of the Force in this room was suffocating. That wasn't exactly unusual, but still, something was off. Sidious grabbed his lightsaber hilt, suddenly feeling on edge as he called out for Maul. And from the ceiling, Maul, cloaked in his robes, would fly down towards his master, igniting both sides of his blade as he crashed into Sidious. But Sidious was ready. He was always ready. He ignited his blade and blocked the powerful swing from Maul, rolling backwards, and he would call Maul a foolish brute, telling him to stand down now, or he will most certainly meet his end. In all of their training sessions, Maul has never truly beaten Sidious, and Sidious has never unleashed his full power. Sidious shook his head, telling Maul his ambition will cost his life. If he stands down, he can put his anger, his hatred, towards the Jedi. Maul would spin his double-sided saber around, telling Sidious that all of his hatred, his anger, his pain, all of it comes from him. The Jedi are weak and foolish, yes, but they are not the center of his fury. Not yet. Sidious was beyond frustrated. He shook his head, grabbing at his hair, then twisted and fired a powerful blast of lightning right into Maul's chest. Maul flew backwards, slammed into the wall, but he got back up, baring his teeth, and he lunged in. Sidious responded, pushing Maul backwards through the hangar with strong slashes. Maul would flip backwards in retreat, landing in the training room, but Sidious was relentless, barely missing a strike right into Maul's knee. Sidious was laughing as Maul spun his blade around as quickly as he could, clearly losing this fight. He was cornered in the training room, and Sidious would slam his blade as hard as he could right against Maul's. He pushed it closer and closer to Maul's face, the two of them in a lightsaber lock. Maul could feel the burn of it, but he waited, and he waited, until the last possible moment. Then, Maul clicked a button on his double-sided saber, and it would split into 2 pieces. The side locked with Sidious stayed put, but the other half would drop into Maul's now open hand, and he ignited it right into Sidious's side, right below his left rib cage. It caught Sidious completely by surprise. He'd let his guard down. He thought he'd won. But he stumbled backwards, realizing the truth. Maul would now hold 2 red sabers in a dual-wielding stance. For years, Maul has been secretly training himself in this lightsaber form. Sidious only trained against him in the double-bladed saber form. Astonishingly, Sidious realized he has been played. Maul used the Force to rip down the open doorway, leaving him and Sidious alone in this pitch-black room with only the red blades lighting it up. Sidious used the pain in his side to stand strong, but it was over. He knew it was over. Maul lunged in, and with speed unlike anything before, he attacked. Sidious blocked every strike he could, but the stab was limiting his moves. The dual wielding was too much for him to track. After teaching Maul the double blade, Maul struck high with one hand, and then he sliced right through Sidious's leg. Sidious fell on his face. Maul then sliced off both of his hands, before spinning his blades around and stabbing them through Sidious's back, killing Sidious on the day he thought everything would change. He was right about that, at least. Across the city, Darth Plagueis was pacing around his personal Coruscant suite, wondering where Sidious was. He was supposed to be here, updating him on Naboo. But something was off. A dark vergence in the Force was felt some time ago, a vergence that the Jedi would not have recognized in their blindness, but he felt it. And soon, a figure would arrive on Plagueis' balcony. Not Sidious, but the assassin, Maul. Plagueis opened the balcony door, and Maul stepped in, throwing the head of Palpatine to the floor as it rolled to Plagueis' feet. Maul would kneel down in front of Plagueis, proclaiming his loyalty to him as the true Sith Apprentice. Sure, Maul hated Darth Sidious with every fiber of his being, but he did not hate the Sith as a whole anymore. The Sith gave him access to this power. He wanted to be a part of it. This was his way of proving himself. Plagueis was surprised. He was almost never surprised anymore. And in the coming days, Sidious was supposed to become Chancellor. Years, no, decades of planning had led up to this. Plagueis wanted to gut Maul where he knelt. He wanted to make it hurt. But as he looked down at Palpatine's head, he realized the truth. Sidious was weak, he was arrogant, and he was a fool who was able to be cut down by his own apprentice. He allowed himself to let his guard down and be killed by his own assassin. Just the sheer idea of it was sickening to Plagueis, who planned to become the one true Sith, living on in immortality. He couldn't imagine dying so soon, and it was Maul who exposed his weakness. So, he would tell Darth Maul to rise, saying he's impressed by his ability. Maul told Plagueis that he knows this greatly alters the Sith plan, but they can adjust. The Sith have spent thousands of years adjusting, removing the weak from their ranks, and Maul would present Plagueis with a plan that the two of them would work on together. Many hours later, inside of the Republic Senate, everyone was gathered here as Queen Amidala was brought in from Naboo. After a quick stop on Tatooine, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and now young Anakin Skywalker returned to Coruscant with the Queen, and in the Senate, her pod would move forward as she asked for immediate Republic intervention. Things were moving slowly, but the excitement would rise as a new pod floated forward. It was the pod of the Intergalactic Banking Clan, represented today by Darth Plagueis, posing as the banker Higo Damask. Damask would tell the Senate that the Federation has gone too far, and his good friend and his longtime partner, Senator Palpatine, has been executed. Damask told the Senate that he recently returned to the Banking Clan, and the Federation came to him for support on their blockade. He denied them, and in return, they executed a close friend and a leader of Naboo. But Plagueis said that this is not all. Palpatine's head was delivered to him, and it was killed with a lightsaber. Gasps and shouts filled the rotunda, and Plagueis made it known that he's not blaming the Jedi Order. This may have been a work of a dark Jedi, someone who has lost their way, but the Federation is out of control. This would prompt the Naboo Queen to call for a vote of no confidence in Valorum. He would be forced to step down from his role, and in the new election, Darth Plagueis would put his own name into the mix, running as Higo Damask. His election campaign would focus on him being a fresh face. He'd been retired for many years, but upon returning to the Republic, he's seen how corrupt it has become. Corporations are killing senators, droid armies are being created, the Republic sits back and does nothing, and even though the Trade Federation was denying it wholeheartedly, it didn't matter. Plagueis' words were carried strong. Plagueis also sprinkled in fear of the Jedi, saying anyone unchecked with a lightsaber could be a threat at any point. And in the coming days, the Federation would completely collapse, having no choice but to pull out of Naboo and face being torn down from the top. Obviously, they didn't kill Palpatine, but the Federation was already broken. Many of the key leaders believed that one of them could have done this. They also wondered if perhaps Lord Sidious executed Palpatine, but his sudden disappearance didn't give them any answers. Either way, the Neimoidians were now seen as murderers. Plagueis was seen as Naboo's savior for exposing the truth, and it would not be long before he was voted in as the next Chancellor, seen by the Senate as a fresh face and an experienced one. And Plagueis would make it known to the Jedi Order that he sees them as nothing more than a cult, clinging to power in a republic that is moving past a need for them. Initially, Plagueis had planned to wait until the Clone Wars to truly begin eliminating trust between the Jedi and the people, but Palpatine's death opened a new opportunity. He planned to push the Jedi out of the Republic, slowly but surely, and when the clone army is ready, they would be used to enforce an empire with a missing Jedi Order. And one of Plagueis' first meetings would be with Dooku. Dooku thought he was in line for years of rebuilding a broken republic with the Sith. He and Palpatine were going to create a war. Dooku had killed his best friend Sifo-Dyas for the cause, and as he met with Plagueis on Sereno, he hoped that Plagueis intended to keep him in the fold, but unfortunately, Dooku's usefulness has run out. Plagueis entered the castle, and it was immediately clear that this would not be a diplomatic meeting. Darth Maul was here as well, and Plagueis would have Maul fight Dooku so he could observe Maul fighting. The duel would get underway, and it would be fairly even to start. Maul was extremely motivated. Each clash of blades was him carving out his rightful place beside Plagueis. He could feel his master's approval in the Force as he watched. It made him fight harder. Dooku tried to counter, but his heart wasn't in it. Every strike came with the realization that he was alone. No Sidious, no Jedi Order, no Republic, no place in the galaxy left for him. He saw Plagueis' stillness in the corner of his eye, and he knew, even if he defeats Maul, it is already over. His stance opened a fraction too wide, and Maul would pierce Dooku's chest with his red blade. Dooku fell to his knees. He had abandoned everything, only to die as a footnote in someone else's rise. Maul pulled the blade free, stepping back with a quiet victory. Plagueis approached the fallen Count, and he would tell Maul to watch. This is how they will survive. Plagueis reached his hand out, closing his eyes, influencing the midichlorians in Dooku. Plagueis would use the Force to kill them, then revive them, bringing Dooku in and out of life, showing Maul the ability that he's mastered to begin his quest to immortality. And Dooku's death would serve a purpose. When the Republic heard of his death, rumors would spread that the Jedi killed him because he threatened to expose their involvement in killing Palpatine. Whether it made sense or not really didn't matter in the end, because the fear was already there. Senators, citizens, everyone began to question and fear the Jedi, wondering if they were hiding a deep evil under the veil of peace. In Plagueis' first year as Chancellor, the Republic felt an almost suspicious sense of clarity. Higo Damask presented himself as the reformer the galaxy had always needed. He pushed sweeping anti-corruption packages through the Senate with astonishing ease. Entire sectors that had been ignored for generations suddenly would see funding for infrastructure, trade lanes, medical facilities. Outer Rim populations felt heard for the first time in so long. But behind the scenes, every credit that flowed outward came from Plagueis' personal re-engineering of the banking clan. He unclogged the galactic economy by giving crime syndicates knowledge that, in time, the Outer Rim will belong to them. For now, all he asks is that they make him look good. It all looked miraculous on paper, but the Jedi could sense something sick pulsing beneath it all. By the second year of his role as Chancellor, the prosperity had reshaped public opinion. People were asking why the Jedi and the Republic insisted for decades that certain reforms were too dangerous. Plagueis never attacked the Jedi outright, but he would create doubt. People began to see that Plagueis went away from the Jedi, and things were better. Crime rates dropped in the Outer Rim, because the criminals were now working for the Chancellor in secret. Plagueis had long-standing relationships with the Hutts, Pikes, the Black Sun. The Jedi warned of the danger, but every warning made them seem old, detached, obstructive. And as Plagueis' reign as Chancellor continued, some Jedi were seeing it as an opportunity. Qui-Gon Jinn, now the master of young Anakin, was telling the Council it's time to leave Coruscant, and support for Qui-Gon's ideas was beginning to grow. there was a fracture in the Jedi Order, and on top of it all, they still felt a rising darkness in this galaxy. But because Maul never revealed himself on Tatooine or Naboo, there was no proof of this. Many, such as Mace Windu, thought that the feeling of darkness was coming from inside of the Order itself. The fracture, spreading from Jedi like Qui-Gon, was the root of this feeling. The Jedi must be united with the Republic in order for the light to shine. Windu and many others thought this, and it made for many tense months and years as the Order was pushing and pulling in different directions. And after around 5 years under Chancellor Damask, the tipping point would finally snap. Massive protests would encircle the Jedi Temple. Senators aligned with Plagueis pushed a motion to relocate the Jedi Order off Coruscant for the safety of the public. Plagueis himself delivered a soft, measured speech urging unity, expressing sorrow at the painful need for this adjustment. And so, after agonizing debate, the Order would prepare to leave the capital that they defended for 1,000 generations. Transports would rise into the sky, blasting off for a new beginning. Plagueis would stand in his office window, serene, satisfied. The Republic was stable, prosperous even, dependent on him in ways they didn't comprehend. Syndicates were in the palm of his hand, financial institutions controlled by him, and with the Jedi gone, the last restraint on his true vision was finally dissolving. The galaxy believed it has entered a golden age, unaware that everything was set up for Plagueis to soon twist this into the Sith Empire. Months after their departure from Coruscant, the Jedi would be settled on Deveron's southern jungles. It was a world full of these misty jungles, and Yoda had insisted on this world. He knew it was time for the Jedi to change. Here, the Council gathered each morning, as Windu, once so rigid to the Senate, took charge of establishing new training rooted in the Force itself. Plo Koon was fostering an early community with local civilians, trading knowledge and healing techniques. Obi-Wan began helping younglings and Padawans building shelter structures. Qui-Gon Jinn would finally push the Council into embracing the living Force, all while training Anakin, who was now in his mid-teens. Masters tended gardens, carved meditation spaces into old ruins, and rebuilt a new archive center. Their days moved slower. Younglings learned to meditate beside waterfalls. Padawans sparred on mossy terraces. And slowly, the Force began to return to them after a long, dark storm without it. Their meditations deepened, their connection to one another grew stronger. For the first time in so long, the Jedi Order wasn't defined by the Republic or its politics. They simply existed with the Force. But they were blind to what would come next. For all these years, as Plagueis rose up in the Republic, Maul was trained for one inevitable mission, one destructive campaign. His hunger for fighting for blood and for power would fester and grow until it would finally be unleashed. He and Plagueis would go to the corporations and the syndicates that Plagueis has long controlled, and they would tell them that the time has come for their re-emergence. On Deveron, morning meditation was underway with Yoda lifting his eyes towards the foggy skies. Then did the youngling sitting cross-legged beside waterfalls, masters guiding Padawans through some exercises, laughter, peace, and then a low, distant rumble rolling through the clouds. At first, it felt like thunder, natural, harmless, but the sound grew sharper, multiplied by the dozens. And then, the first cannon fire crashed right through the fog and trees, lighting up the peaceful Jedi camps, vaporizing half of the meditation grove as blasts smashed into the ground. The shockwaves tore through huts, hurling bodies into the trees. Yoda realized, as he was hit by the second wave, that the Jedi found the Force here on Deveron, but they remained blind to the darkness in the rest of the galaxy. He was consumed by the blasts. In the chaos, Darth Maul would land in the heart of what remained of a training field. Panicked Jedi would see the first Sith Lord in generations as his double-bladed saber ignited. The darkness surrounding him was unlike anything the Jedi had ever felt before. Any Jedi who charged him died within seconds. Masters Sazitin and Agen Kolar stepped forward to buy time for some younglings. Maul severed Sazi in one strike, then impaled Agen in the next. Ayla Secura leapt from the tree line with both sabers raised. Maul spun, caught her with the Force, and slammed her into the ground before finishing her with a downward strike. Even Plo Koon was forced into retreat as droid battalions were pouring into the ruined camps, blasters firing non-stop into the clusters of fleeing Jedi. Fires spread, trees toppled, bodies falling everywhere. The peaceful order that had rebuilt itself in these jungles was being torn apart. Survivors fled into the dense trees, but the forest did not have safety. Droid patrols were swarming around the skies. Syndicate warriors swept the paths with flamethrowers. Maul moved like a ghost, hunting without sound, without any hesitation. He would find Master Sinube and 5 of his students trying to carry an injured Kit Fisto to a cave. One by one, he cut them down. Obi-Wan nearly engaged him, but was dragged away by Qui-Gon, knowing it was too late. Anakin, separated from his master, pulled a dozen survivors into the river, escaping the bombers overhead, barely keeping them alive as the current dragged them away. Across the jungle, Jedi ships were erupting into fireballs. Every transport, every comm station, every beacon was destroyed by Plagueis' first strike teams. No one could flee or call for help, and by nightfall, the Jedi Order was shattered. 10,000 Jedi, reduced to scattered, terrified pockets of survivors, running through a burning jungle with no supplies, no ships, no communications, and a Sith Lord stalking them, with thousands of warriors and droids behind him. The peaceful world that had healed the Jedi for months was a graveyard. The days after the fall of the camp would blur into a single, endless nightmare. Maul didn't leave Deveron. He learned the jungle like a predator. This was his purpose for now. Any Jedi who tried to regroup would be found and slaughtered. Small camps were crushed under droid tanks. Fires were set deliberately, driving survivors to their deaths. Maul was faster, stronger, darker. Every Jedi Council master was dead or missing. Qui-Gon Jinn was missing. Many Padawans watched masters fall and felt something inside of them crack. 3 months into the constant purge, a massive hollow projection would finally bloom over the trees, visible for kilometers. And after 3 months, almost every Jedi was dead, and Emperor Plagueis would appear to any survivors. He told these survivors that they were the strongest remnants of a broken philosophy. He would promise safety, food, and shelter in his new empire, beneath him and beneath Lord Maul. And in the coming hours and days, roughly 100 Jedi emerged from the forest, desperate for an end to this. They knelt before Maul, and they were forced to give up locations of any Jedi who refused the offer, including Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Plagueis accepted all of these offered locations. Once the last transport lifted off, Deveron was erased. Orbital fire rained down on the locations of the Jedi. Anakin and Obi-Wan tried to protect everyone they could, but it was over. And when the 100 Jedi that turned to the dark side would return to Coruscant, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Plagueis had abandoned the Outer Rim entirely, letting syndicates rule openly. The Banking Clan answered to the Sith Emperor. Plagueis had unveiled the clone army with enhanced loyalty. The Senate would fall to his army, having no choice but to die or give up their seats to an emperor. And as the Sith Empire rose through force, the surviving Jedi had been broken, giving themselves to the darkness. Any who tried to turn back were quickly killed. Maul would often consider overthrowing Plagueis, but how could he? Plagueis learned the power to cheat death, and so Maul stayed as the conquering apprentice in a galaxy that would long drown in the dark side. And folks, that is our story for today. Whoa, that is our story for today. Yeah, dark side. I know I've said this a lot recently, but I've been really into him lately. I really enjoyed this one. It's actually not often for me where I do a dark side ending where I'm like, I really like that one. Sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm due for a dark side ending or whatever, but I really like this one. And hey, if this video does well, I might even do a part 2 where we, maybe see a reemergence of a couple surviving Jedi on Deveron, but I don't, honestly, if I'm being honest with you guys, I don't anticipate this video doing well, and because this is my job, I would kind of have to prioritize a new video afterward, and yeah, this would just be the ending, so, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed overall. Darkside, Maul, Apprentice, kills Sidious, Plagueis becomes immortal, basically, as he nearly did, and yeah, that's what happens. I thought this was fun, the idea of the Jedi being isolated, going to a world, learning the Force, and being like, wow, this is so peaceful, only to just ignore the outer galaxy and not foresee the coming attack. I thought that was a lot of fun, in a really dark, horrible way, but yeah, appreciate you guys. Let me know what you want to see next. Anakin and Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon. Rest in peace, and I'll see you in the next video.